Dear listeners, close your eyes and imagine. A child sits alone by a dying fire. Outside, the night is so silent that even the wind forgets to blow. In the next room, his mother lies pale and breathless, lost in fever and silence. Then from the doorway, a soft cry breaks through the stillness. A cat's meow, gentle but chilling. There it stands, a black cat with burning golden eyes, staring deep into the boy's soul. What does it bring? Hope or destruction? This is not a tale of magic. It is a tale of choices that change everything. But before we begin the story, don't forget to support this channel by liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing. Your support means the world to us and gives us the energy to keep sharing more emotional stories. Also, don't forget to check in through the comment section. Let us know where you're listening from, so we can see how far these stories have reached. Now let's begin the story. In a quiet village wrapped in thick forest, there lived a young boy named Arden. He was just 10 years old, but his heart carried the weight of someone far older. He lived with his mother, Mira, once known as the brightest smile in the village. But now Mira lay weak and fading, her skin pale, her breathing shallow. Arden no longer knew the joy of running through fields or playing by the river. His days were spent at her side, changing cold cloths on her forehead, feeding her warm porridge he had learned to make on his own, whispering her name in hopes she would wake. The villagers had started to speak in hushed voices. They said Myra's illness was not of this world. Long ago, she had wandered too deep into the forbidden forest, too far into the place where strange voices whispered and the trees remembered. And now, they said, the forest had cursed her. That night, as the sky turned black and the wind vanished, Arden sat beside the small hearth. The fire barely glowed. Shadows danced across the cracked wooden walls. Behind him, his mother stirred faintly in her sleep, her breathing uneven, her fingers clutching at invisible threads. Then came soft meow. Arden turned sharply. The sound was delicate, but it struck him like thunder. He walked to the door slowly, carefully. And there it was. Black cat. Its fur glistened despite the mist in the air. Its eyes burned golden like twin lanterns. Did not move. Did not blink. It only stared at Arden as if time itself had stopped between them. He stepped outside, unable to explain why his feet followed. Do you want to show me something?" he whispered. The cat turned. It began to walk. And Arden followed. The cat led him past the quiet huts, down a path blanketed in fallen leaves. The air smelled of earth and sorrow. With each step, Arden looked back, toward the house where his mother lay. But the cat kept walking, and he kept following. They entered the forest, the one no one dared to speak of. The forbidden forest. The trees here were taller than towers, their branches clawing at the sky. No crickets, no owls, only silence. But the cat kept walking. And Arden, barefoot and shivering, did not stop. They walked for what felt like hours, deeper and deeper, until the trees curved into a strange arch. Between them shimmered a veil of light, thin and fragile like morning frost. The cat stepped through. Arden froze. Behind him only darkness. Ahead, something unknown. His heart pounded. His hands trembled. He turned back once more, thinking of his mother's face, so quiet, so pale. Then he stepped forward and entered the unknown. Everything changed. The sky turned violet. Floating stones drifted in the air. Rivers glowed like moonlight trapped in water. The wind whispered things not in words, but in feelings. Old memories, forgotten lullabies, lost names. The cat stood ahead. But it was no longer a cat. Before Arden rose a tall woman, her hair like flowing ink, her eyes shining with golden fire. Her voice echoed softly, though her lips barely moved. "I am Nera," she said, "the guardian between worlds." Arden stepped back, but something in her eyes calmed his fear. "I have watched you for a long time," she said gently. "Your mother's sickness is not by chance. She carries a curse from this place. A curse that only you can break." Arden's chest tightened. His voice broke as he spoke. "Tell me how." "You must go to the core," Nera said. "A place guarded by the Warden of Thorns. There lies the Cure Stone, your only hope to save her. But the journey will not be easy. Many have entered. None have returned." Arden looked down. Then slowly he raised his eyes. "I will go," he said. Nera knelt before him and handed him a small glowing pendant. The cat form returned, curling beside his feet. "You will not be alone," she said. "But be warned, Arden. The path ahead will test your soul." He nodded, because he had already made his choice. He would not return empty-handed. He would not lose the only person he had left. He would walk through fire if it meant holding her hand once more. He would go into the heart of this world, to bring hope back home. The moment Arden stepped beyond Nera's side and into the path that led deeper into the glowing realm, the air shifted. The ground beneath him felt soft, yet unfamiliar, like walking on breathing moss. Trees around him were not made of bark and leaves but of glimmering strands of silver that pulsed gently, as if each one had a heartbeat. This was not the world he knew. Nothing about it obeyed the rules of Earth. Yet, as strange as it was, something about it felt ancient, older than memory, older than pain. He held the glowing pendant Nera had given him tightly in his fist. It pulsed with warmth, as though it could feel his fear and offered silent comfort. Beside him, the black cat walked silently, its eyes focused forward. Occasionally it would look back at him, making sure he hadn't fallen behind. The path narrowed as they walked, winding through strange arches made of floating stones. Each time he stepped under one, whispers filled the air. He couldn't understand the words, but they stirred something inside his chest. Memories, longings, and fears he didn't know he carried. The third archway was different. As Arden passed beneath it, the whispering turned sharper. He heard his mother's voice, weak and cracked, crying out in pain. "Arden! Where are you?" He froze. It wasn't a memory. It was her voice now. Real. Immediate. He turned, heart pounding. But there was no one there. The cat stopped and sat, watching him silently. "Was that real?" Arden asked, his voice shaking. The cat only blinked. Then Arden heard something else. Laughter. Not his mother's, but another voice. One he hadn't heard in years. His father. The memory came crashing in. Arden had been 5 when his father walked out. There had been a fight. Screaming. Slamming doors. And then silence. His mother never spoke of it again. But now the voice echoed around him. "You were never enough," it sneered. "That's why I left." "No," Arden whispered, shaking his head. "It's your fault," the voice continued. "You couldn't even keep your mother safe." "Stop," he said louder, pressing the pendant to his chest. The whispering grew louder. Shadows began to rise from the ground, curling around his legs. His breath came faster. He stumbled backward. Then the cat leapt. With a hiss, it struck one of the shadows, and it vanished into smoke. The pendant flared in his hand. Arden squeezed it tightly, and the warmth spread through his chest. The whispers faded. The shadows retreated. The forest fell silent again. The cat stood beside him now, tail low, fur slightly bristled. Its eyes met his. Arden nodded. "Thank you," he whispered. They continued. The path twisted again, leading down a steep hill. Strange creatures watched from behind glowing trees, some with too many eyes, some without any. None dared come near as long as the cat walked beside Arden. After what felt like hours, they reached a clearing. In the center stood a pond. The surface was perfectly still, like a mirror made of starlight. On the far side stood a gate, made not of wood or metal, but woven light, shaped like an intricate knot that pulsed with power. Before they could reach it, a figure stepped out from behind the trees. It was a girl, about Arden's age. Her hair was long and white as snow, and her skin shimmered faintly. Arden stepped back. The cat let out a low growl. "Don't be afraid," the girl said. Her voice was soft but echoed unnaturally in the air. "I'm not here to harm you." "Who are you?" Arden asked. "My name is Shiva. I've been waiting for someone like you. Someone like me. A heart that hasn't been twisted. One that still believes." Arden looked at her cautiously. "What do you want?" "To help," she said. "But there's a price." Arden's grip on the pendant tightened. "You seek the cure stone," Shiva said. "To save your mother." His breath caught. Shiva stepped forward. "Then you'll need to pass through the gate of wounds. But it won't open for just anyone. You must leave behind something precious." Arden frowned. "Like what?" She looked at him with eyes that suddenly seemed far older than her face. "A memory. One that keeps your heart alive." "No," Arden whispered. "Why would I give up something like that?" "Because the warden beyond that gate will destroy you if you carry your deepest love. He feeds on it. If you give it up now, you might survive." Arden stared at the gate, then back at her. And for a moment he saw her differently. Her eyes weren't kind anymore. They were hungry. He stepped back. "You're not helping me," he said. "You're trying to take what I have left." The cat hissed lowly. Shiva's smile vanished. "You'll regret this," she whispered. And then her body melted into smoke. Arden stood frozen. The pond behind her rippled. He dropped to his knees, panting. The air felt heavier now. The cat rubbed against his side. "I won't give up my memories," Arden said, more to himself than to anyone. "I need them." He looked up at the gate. His light flickered. Then the pendant in his hand pulsed, once, twice. The gate responded. The knot of light slowly began to unravel. And just like that it opened. Beyond the gate was no longer forest. It was a bridge. A narrow one, floating above nothingness. Below it, clouds swirled slowly, lit from beneath by a shifting red glow. There were no rails. Only silence. Arden hesitated. The cat stepped forward onto the bridge and looked back. Arden followed. Each step made his heart pound. The wind here whispered louder than before. But it was not voices now. It was his own thoughts, twisted and amplified. What if she's already gone? What if this is all a lie? What if you're the curse? He clenched his jaw. Kept walking. Halfway across, the wind grew stronger. It howled now like a storm trapped between worlds. The bridge shook. A shadow rose from below. Had no face. No eyes. But Arden knew what it was. Fear. His fear. It stretched, towering above him, reaching with long fingers that shimmered like smoke. The cat leapt forward again, but the shadow pushed it aside. It wasn't attacking the cat. It wanted him. The bridge cracked beneath his feet. Arden screamed. The shadow touched his chest. And suddenly he was standing in his house again. His mother was dead. Villagers stared at him with pity. He was alone. He fell to his knees. No. No. The pendant flared. And the vision shattered. He was back on the bridge. Breathing hard. The cat stood beside him again, its side heaving. The shadow was gone. But the bridge beneath him was breaking. He ran. Step after step, the pieces behind him fell into the mist below. The gate at the end was closing. He jumped and landed on the other side just as the last piece of the bridge vanished. He collapsed, gasping. They were through. He didn't know what awaited next. But he had come too far to turn back. And somewhere deep ahead, the warden was waiting. The ground Arden landed on was no longer smooth or glowing. It was dark. Life. Moss covered every inch of the twisted trees around him. But the moss moved, slowly breathing as if the earth itself had a heartbeat. The silence was deeper here, almost heavy. It pressed against his ears, as if trying to block out every sound except the wild rhythm of his own heart. The black cat sat quietly beside him, tail curled around its paws, eyes glowing with a dim light. Arden stood, legs trembling, breath short. His body ached from the jump. His hands were scraped and his knees bruised, but none of it mattered. They had crossed. Now they were inside the outer border of the warden's domain. Before them, a forest stretched in every direction, but not like any forest Arden had ever seen. These trees bent in impossible shapes. Their roots rose above ground, forming walls and hallways. Some trunks were twisted into arches, others into spirals. But most disturbing of all were the faces. Dozens of them. Carved into the bark. Not with tools but grown there. Eyelids half closed, mouths open in eternal silence. The faces looked almost human but not entirely. And their eyes followed Arden as he walked past them. He tried not to look at them, but every step made it harder. The deeper they went, the stronger the air began to smell, like old paper and burnt wood. And the whispers returned. This time they weren't unknown voices. They were his own memories. One voice echoed from the left, Mira laughing as she spun him around when he was small, her arms strong, her eyes glowing. Another voice from the right, her crying behind a door he wasn't supposed to hear through, whispering his name like a prayer. Then a memory from straight ahead, as clear as day. Arden at 7, curled up under his blanket, alone in a storm, whispering, "Come back, Papa. Please come back." He closed his eyes and tried to block it out. The cat walked beside him silently, but its fur was bristling now. Sensed something. Something was wrong. Not just the forest. The air itself shifted. And then the trees moved. Not slowly, not subtly. They moved like water around him, changing their places, closing behind him, opening a new path ahead. They were being led. Not by choice. Something was guiding them. They emerged into a wide clearing. In the center was a mirror. Not a small one. A huge vertical surface stretching between two stone pillars. The frame was carved with strange symbols that shimmered like wet ink. The surface of the mirror wasn't glass. It was liquid, still and silent. Arden approached, drawn by something he couldn't explain. The cat didn't follow. He stopped a few steps away. The mirror remained still. Then it rippled. And Arden saw himself. But not as he was now. In the mirror he stood taller, older. His face thinner, sharper, eyes full of sorrow. Behind this future Arden, his mother stood, smiling but fragile. And next to them was the figure of a man, shadowed, distant, but unmistakable. His father. The image broke. In its place, Mira appeared again, but this time lying on a bed of leaves, still and cold. The boy in the reflection, himself, stood frozen, doing nothing. Arden stepped back. Then the mirror spoke. "Do you truly believe you can change her fate?" The voice was neither male nor female. It echoed like stone cracking in silence. He said nothing. The mirror asked again, louder. "Will you sacrifice what little you have left for something that may already be lost?" Arden clenched his fists. "Yes." The mirror shimmered. "And will you still walk forward? If the price is your soul?" He didn't understand what that meant. But he nodded anyway. The mirror cracked down the center. And the trees around them shuddered. The ground shook slightly beneath his feet as a new path opened behind the mirror. This one led downward, into a cavern carved into the roots of the forest itself. Black vines dripped from the ceiling like chains. The walls pulsed gently with blue veins of light, like a heartbeat guiding them deeper. The cat walked ahead this time. Arden followed. Inside the cavern, the air grew thicker, heavy with dust and memory. The deeper they went, the more time itself seemed to slow. Every step echoed for too long. Every breath lingered in his throat. Then they saw it. Door. Carved into stone, covered in symbols he didn't understand. But as he stepped forward, the symbols began to glow. One by one they lit up, as if responding to his presence. Suddenly, a voice rang out. "You should not have come here." The sound came from behind them, then in front, then everywhere. The cat crouched low, tail twitching, ears back. Arden stepped closer to the door. Then from the dark a figure emerged. It was not a beast, not a monster. It was a boy, around Arden's age. But his eyes were hollow, his skin pale and dry like old bark. His hair hung in damp strands across his face. He wore no shoes, no color, only gray. And he smiled. "You don't understand, do you?" the boy said. "The warden doesn't kill you. He shows you everything you fear. Until you choose to stay." Arden frowned. "Who are you?" The boy looked away. "I was like you. A long time ago. I tried to save someone too." "Your mother." The boy flinched. He didn't answer. Instead he said, "The door behind you leads to the warden. You won't win." "I don't care," Arden replied. "I didn't come to win. I came to save her." The strange boy stepped aside. "I stayed here," he said quietly, "because I couldn't face what I saw. My truth." Arden walked past him. The boy didn't stop him. But as he reached for the door, the boy whispered, "He will show you what she truly felt, even the things you never knew. If you survive it, you'll never be the same." Arden hesitated, but only for a second. He pushed the door. It opened with a sound like wind through dead leaves. The chamber beyond was vast. No walls, just darkness stretching in all directions. But in the center stood a throne, twisted, made of roots and bones. And upon it, creature, not fully man, not beast. It had a human face, pale and calm. But from its back, vines grew like wings. Its eyes were silver and empty. Its hands were long fingers like blades of ash. The Warden of Thorns. He did not speak. He simply watched. And Arden felt every part of himself begin to tremble. Then the warden raised one hand. And everything went dark. A moment passed. And Arden was somewhere else. He was home. But not quite. The floor was too clean. The light too soft. His mother sat by the window, smiling. Healthy. Happy. He ran to her. But she didn't see him. She only stared out at the trees. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I should have protected you better." Arden reached for her, but his hands passed through her like mist. Then her voice changed. I'm tired of pretending I'm strong. The window shattered. And suddenly Arden stood in the forest again. Only now, every tree bore his mother's face. Each one crying. Each one whispering his name. He fell to his knees. Hands over his ears. I'm not enough, he whispered. I couldn't save her. The warden stood behind him, watching, waiting. And Arden, surrounded by grief-made flesh, felt himself begin to break. But then, a gentle paw touched his knee. The cat, still there, still real. And the pendant, pulse, heartbeat, not his mother's, faint, but still alive. Arden stood. Tears streaked his face. I'm not leaving. He faced the warden. I'm not giving up. The vines stirred. The creature tilted its head. For the first time. It blinked. Sound like cracking stone filled the air. And something behind the throne began to glow. Crystal. Soft golden. The cure stone. But the warden did not move. It was letting him choose. Take it. Or leave it. The price. Arden stepped forward. And reached out. Arden's fingertips hovered over the cure stone. The golden crystal pulsed slowly, as though breathing, its light warm and soft, almost tender. It floated just behind the warden's throne, casting delicate shadows on the walls of the endless chamber. And yet, despite its beauty, it was surrounded by a silence so deep, so unnatural. It pressed against Arden's chest like an invisible hand. The Warden of Thorns did not move. Its silver eyes watched him with a stillness that was almost cruel. No threat, no rage. Only a patient, terrible calm. The vines that grew from its back curled lazily through the air, like tendrils sensing the weight of his thoughts. Arden swallowed hard. The black cat stood behind him, silent as ever, but he felt its presence like a thread keeping him from unraveling. His mind raced. Was this it? Had he finally reached the end? He took a step closer, then another. As his hand extended, the pendant around his neck grew hot, burning against his skin. He winced, but he didn't stop. His fingertips brushed the surface of the stone. Suddenly, a voice rang out. You are not ready. The chamber darkened. The cure stone vanished in a burst of light. The warden rose from its throne. Its full height was monstrous, twice the height of a man. The vines on its back flared out like wings of rot, and its long arms unfolded with a grace that defied its size. Yet its face remained eerily calm. From the silence, a new shape began to form between them. Figure. Familiar. First it was just a silhouette. But as the shadows retreated, Arden's breath caught in his throat. 'Twas Mira, his mother. Not the weakened, dying woman he had left behind, but a younger version. Strong, beautiful, eyes full of sorrow. But this version of Mira did not smile at him. She stared at him with disappointment. I didn't ask for this, she said, her voice cold. Arden stumbled backward. No, that's not her. That's not real. The warden stepped aside, letting the vision speak for itself. You should have stayed with me, she continued. You left me alone. I wanted to save you, Arden said, his voice shaking. And if you fail? The vision asked. Who will be there when I take my last breath? The words stabbed deeper than any blade. Behind the false Mira, more shadows took shape. Villagers, neighbors, all of them whispering. He left her. What kind of son does that? She died alone. Arden pressed his hands to his ears. Stop. That's not true. But the voices grew louder, climbing over each other like waves. You're just a child. You're weak. You were never enough. And then, His own voice joined them. I was scared. The room trembled. The pendant glowed again, brighter this time. Not just warm but pulsing with urgency. The cat hissed sharply, leaping forward and swiping through the air. The vision of Mira wavered. Arden opened his eyes. The voices stopped. Silence fell once more. The warden stared at him, still unmoving. Then it spoke again. You cannot take the stone until you understand the weight of your promise. The ground cracked beneath Arden's feet. He fell. Not physically but deeper. Into memory. Into the moment he had tried to forget for so long. He was 7. Rain poured outside. Inside, his mother sat at the table, hands in her lap, staring at nothing. He had broken a plate that morning. It was nothing important, just a dish. But Mira hadn't yelled. She hadn't scolded. She had cried. Quiet, trembling sobs. Back then, Arden didn't understand. He had walked to her and held her hand, small fingers wrapped around hers. And he had whispered, I'll protect you. I'll never let you cry again. It was the first promise he had ever made. And it was the one that had haunted him every day since her sickness began. Now, standing in the warden's chamber, he remembered. He remembered how she had looked at him with a smile full of pain and whispered, One day, Arden, you'll understand that even a promise made in love can carry the weight of a lifetime. He returned to the present with a gasp, tears streaming down his cheeks. His knees hit the ground. But this time he did not break. I made a promise, he said softly, raising his head to the warden. Not because I had to. Not because I thought I could fix everything. He stood. I made that promise because I love her. The warden tilted its head. And that love is stronger than your fear? It asked. Arden looked at the cat. Then he looked at the empty space where the vision of his mother had stood. Yes. The chamber glowed. The vines withdrew. The warden stepped back. And the cure stone reappeared. Floating. Within reach. But this time no test, no vision. Only choice. Arden walked forward. His hand trembled. He touched the stone. It was cold. Then warm. It dissolved into his chest, sinking into his heart like a drop of fire in water. He gasped, collapsed. The last thing he saw before everything faded was the warden lowering its head in silence. And the black cat curling beside him, eyes closing. He woke on the edge of the forest. Back in the real world. The sky was still dark, but the air smelled like morning. Beside him lay the pendant. Dim now but whole. He sat up slowly. The black cat sat nearby, watching him with tired eyes. He stood and began to run, faster than his feet could carry him, through branches, through mist, back to the village, back home. He burst into the house. Mira lay there, ill, too still. He dropped to his knees, placed the pendant on her chest. Please, he whispered. Please don't leave me. The pendant pulsed once. Then again. Mira inhaled sharply. Her eyes fluttered open. She blinked. Arden! He broke. Fell into her arms, sobbing. She held him weak but alive. And for the first time in weeks, she smiled. Outside in the shadows of the trees, a pair of golden eyes watched them. The cat stood alone. Then, as the wind whispered through the leaves, it turned and disappeared into the forest once more. Mira was alive. The impossible had happened. Her eyes had opened. Her breath had returned. Her arms, weak and trembling, had wrapped around Arden's small frame with all the strength she had left. In that moment, it felt as though the darkness that had swallowed their lives had finally lifted. But peace was a fragile thing. In the days that followed, Myra's strength slowly returned, though not fully. Her skin regained some of its color, and the deep shadows beneath her eyes began to fade. Arden stayed close by her side, helping her eat, helping her sit, talking to her through the silence they had both grown used to. But the light that returned to her face wasn't complete. Each night, Mira would wake gasping, drenched in sweat, whispering words she couldn't remember by morning. She stared at shadows too long. She looked over her shoulder more often. And sometimes when Arden touched her hand, she flinched. Just a little. Barely noticeable. But Arden noticed. The villagers, who once avoided their house like it carried a plague, now came offering soup and prayers. They praised Arden quietly. Some called it a miracle. Others didn't ask questions at all. But no one knew what had truly happened in the forest. And Arden didn't tell them. Not about the cat. Not about the warden. Not even about the promise. Because something inside him had changed. He didn't feel like a boy anymore. He had seen too much. But even then, even surrounded by the warm hands of neighbors and the soft light of a returning dawn, a cold wind still lingered in the corners of their small home. The pendant, now quiet and cool, hung from a nail on the wall. Arden refused to wear it anymore. He didn't know why. Until the night of the bleeding sky started without warning. Just after sundown, the clouds turned the color of rust. The wind, once gentle, began to blow in sharp bursts, carrying the scent of something rotting. Trees around the village twisted slightly, as though reacting to something far away. Then came the animals. Dogs whined. Cows bellowed. Birds took to the sky in panicked flocks, their cries sharp and desperate. And Mira collapsed. She was in the middle of trying to stand from her chair when her legs gave out. She crumpled to the floor, hands clutching her chest, breath rapid and shallow. Arden screamed. He lifted her with all his strength and laid her on the bed, brushing the hair from her face, whispering her name over and over. Her eyes rolled back. Her mouth moved, but no sound came out. He reached for the pendant. But it didn't glow. Stayed cold. Outside, thunder cracked with no lightning. Then a shadow passed over the moon. Arden ran to the window. And there, at the edge of the forest, stood the cat. But it was not the same. Its fur was slick with something dark. Its golden eyes no longer burned with warmth, but flickered with something distant, tired and unfamiliar. Then it turned and disappeared into the trees. Arden didn't hesitate. He grabbed the pendant and bolted into the night, his bare feet slapping against the earth, his breath sharp in his throat. The villagers called after him, but their voices faded behind him like mist. He entered the forest again. But this time it was different. The air was too still. The path had changed. The trees didn't whisper. They watched. And the deeper he went, the more he realized something terrible. The curse hadn't been broken. Had been delayed. The path led him deeper than before. Past roots that pulsed with a dim red glow. Past stones carved with symbols that he now understood without learning. He moved not like a child but like someone called by something older than the world. And then, in the very center of the forest, he found the cat. It sat beneath a twisted tree, one Arden didn't recognize. The trunk was black, split in half, and from its center oozed a thick silver sap. The cat looked weak, its breathing shallow. As Arden approached, it opened its mouth. Not to meow but to speak. And this time the words came not from its mouth, but from somewhere deeper. You brought her back. But the wound remains. Arden knelt beside it, trembling. Tell me what to do. The cat looked at him for a long moment, then stood with great effort and turned, leading him away from the tree, slower than before. The curse was not hers. Not truly. It was planted in her through your love. Trap. A seed meant to grow through sorrow. I don't understand, Arden whispered. You pulled her back, the voice continued. But you took something with you. Something from the warden's realm. It still clings to her soul. Arden's hand shook. So she's still cursed. Not fully. But what you saved, you must now protect. Not with your heart. With your truth. They stopped at a place Arden recognized. The gate. It had returned. Only now it pulsed with a different light. Not gold. Not silver. But red. The forest behind it breathed with slow fury. The cat looked up at him. You must return. Not as a child asking, but as a soul offering. Arden's heart sank. Offering what? Yourself. Silence stretched between them. She will not survive another collapse. And the curse knows. It will take her soon fully. Unless you bring it home. To where it began. Arden closed his eyes. He thought of her laughter. Her voice. Her arms around him when he was small. The warmth of her hand in his. I'm not afraid, he whispered. But I don't want to disappear. The cat touched his foot with its head. You won't. Not if you remember who you are. And with that the gate opened. Not with a flash. But a soft sigh like the final breath before sleep. Inside was not the same realm as before. It was darker. The sky above shimmered like blood. The ground crunched under his feet like glass. Shadows moved ahead of him, not around him. He followed the path. There were no bridges. No mirror. No warden. Only one thing stood waiting at the end of the path. Himself. But twisted. Hollow. Skin cracked. Heart exposed. Beating in his hand like something stolen. The twisted version of Arden smiled. I'm what you left behind, it said. All the pain you hid. Arden didn't speak. The twisted double stepped forward. You thought saving her meant escaping this. But it followed you. Because it's you. The two faced each other. And slowly Arden reached out. Touched the exposed heart. And whispered. I'm not afraid of you anymore. The world cracked. The fake Arden screamed. And vanished. The curse shattered like glass. And the ground turned golden beneath his feet. When he woke he was back home. In his bed. Morning light poured through the window. Mira stood beside him. Smiling. It is clear. No shadows. No fear. Only love. And Arden knew. The curse was gone. Not delayed. Not hidden. And in its place. Promise kept. The sun rose higher that morning than it had in weeks. Its golden light spilled across the village rooftops, dancing on dewy leaves and warming the stones that lined the old forest path. The birds sang louder, freer, as though the world itself had been holding its breath, and now at last had exhaled. Inside the small wooden house near the forest's edge, Mira laughed. Not the weak, forced laugh she used to mask pain, but a real one, light and clear. She stirred a pot of porridge, humming a lullaby under her breath, her eyes following Arden as he tidied the corner of the room. He was moving slower than usual that day, not from weariness, but from something harder to describe. A quiet heaviness sat in his chest. Not grief, not sadness, but a silence, the kind that follows storms. The kind that hides what hasn't yet been understood. Later that afternoon, Mira sat beneath the large banyan tree near the well, watching the breeze play with a cloth on the laundry line. Arden sat at her feet, drawing patterns in the dirt with a stick. He hadn't told her everything. How could he? How could anyone explain the shape of the realm he'd walked through, the faces in the trees, the warden of thorns, or the cat that spoke without speaking. She had asked him gently how he saved her. He had only replied, "I found the thing that was hurting you." She hadn't pushed for more. And somehow that was enough. But that evening, as the stars blinked into life one by one, Arden heard it again. A whisper came not from the trees, not from a dream, but from the pendant. It had begun to glow, faint, barely visible, but unmistakable. He took it from where it hung on the wall and held it in his palm. Pulsed once, then again, then it stopped. The cat was calling. He waited until Mira had fallen asleep. Then he slipped out into the night. The moon was thin, a silver hook in the sky. Crickets sang in the underbrush. The forest loomed quietly, no longer as threatening, but still ancient, still heavy with memories. The moment his bare feet touched the edge of the forest floor, the pendant pulsed again. And the cat appeared. But it was different this time. Its fur shone like moonlight now, no longer black and shadowy. Its eyes were no longer golden, but deep green like moss over old stone. It didn't speak. Not with words. Not like before. Turned. And began to walk. Arden followed. The path they walked was unfamiliar, though somehow it still felt like part of the same realm he had entered before. But this one was quieter. Not dark, not broken, not cursed. Just forgotten. After a long while they reached a clearing. At the center of it stood a large stone covered in ivy. The shape was rough, but unmistakably carved, something left behind long ago. Surrounding it were flowers that glowed with a soft blue light, swaying in wind that didn't touch the trees. The cat stopped beside the stone, then sat. Arden looked down. There, carved deep into the stone, was a name. Lena. The moment he read it, a sudden wave of emotion struck him. But it wasn't his. It wasn't Myra's. It was the cat's. And slowly the truth unraveled. This cat, this guardian, this silent guide, it had once been someone else. Someone who had made a promise. Just like him. He sat on the grass beside the cat. The air smelled like old rain. And he listened. Not to words but to memory. Long ago there had been a girl. Lena. A child just like Arden, who had wandered too deep into the forbidden forest to save someone she loved. Her brother had fallen ill. No one could help. The village had given up. But Lena had not. She had walked the same paths Arden had, faced the same fears, the same warden. But unlike Arden, she had made a different choice. She had offered herself completely, leaving no piece of her soul behind, not even a name. And the warden, moved not by pity but by the shape of her truth, had accepted her. She had saved her brother. But she had remained. As a guide. As a whisper. As the cat. Arden's hand shook as he reached out and touched the name on the stone. A single tear rolled down his cheek, not for his own sorrow but for hers. She had waited. All this time. Not for thanks. Not for rescue. But for understanding. And now someone knew. "I'm sorry," he whispered. The cat looked up at him, eyes soft and endless. Then stood. And walked forward. Toward the center of the clearing, where the blue flowers grew thickest. There the cat stopped. Its body shimmered. Glowed. And slowly, gently, faded into the light. No pain. No fear. Only peace. A final whisper brushed through Arden's mind like wind through branches. "Thank you." When he returned home, the pendant was no longer glowing. But it felt warmer. And lighter. Like it had let go of something. Mira woke when he returned. She didn't ask where he had gone. She only smiled and took his hand, holding it as she used to when he was small. And for the first time, Arden didn't feel like he had to protect her. He just needed to love her. And that was enough. But the forest still stood beyond their home. And the wind still carried whispers. Not of curses. Not of sorrow. But of names. Of promises. Of children who once walked through shadow and flame. And returned with light. Morning came soft and slow. The sun peered through the windows of Arden's home with a gentleness that felt intentional, as though the light itself knew the house had been through enough. The scent of boiled herbs drifted through the air. Mira was humming again, standing at the table and crushing leaves into a small bowl. Her voice was stronger, though still thin at the edges. It carried the weight of recovery, not of sickness. Arden sat at the doorway, watching the horizon where the edge of the forest kissed the sky. A breeze drifted across the earth, brushing the hair from his face. He had not spoken of the night before, when the cat faded into the flowers and the story of Lena was carved into his heart like roots into soil. Some things did not need to be said aloud. And yet, deep in his chest, something had started to stir again. It was not fear. It was not grief. It was a question. A quiet, aching whisper that had no voice yet. But it would soon. 3 days passed. On the 4th morning, Arden awoke to find Mira outside. Her hands wrapped around a cup of warm water. Her face was still, eyes lost in the horizon. "Mama?" he asked softly. She blinked, looked at him, then smiled with weariness. "Did you feel that?" she whispered. Arden tilted his head. "Feel what?" She looked at the sky. The stillness. The village, once lively in the mornings, was silent that day. No birdsong. No chatter from the old men near the well. No barking dogs. Even the trees didn't move. It was as if the world had pressed pause, and was waiting. Arden wandered the paths, eyes searching the tree lines. The pendant now kept in his pocket was still, lifeless, not cold but no longer guiding. Still he carried it, not as a tool but as a reminder. And that night it came again, a dream, but not like the others. This one was not made of memory. It was made of warning. He was standing in the village square. But everything was wrong. The sky above him was torn, slashed in black streaks like claw marks across a painting. The houses were twisted, bent like wax figures left too close to a flame. The well overflowed not with water, but with black vines that slithered in slow circles. The people, those he knew, the neighbors who had brought bread, the children he played with, stood silently, staring at nothing. Their eyes were empty. Their mouths moved, but no sound came out. And in the center of the square stood the tree. Not the banyan tree. Not one from the forest. But that tree, the one Lena had died beneath. Silver sap ran from its core. And beneath it stood a figure. Not the warden. Not Lena. But a child. Younger than Arden. Maybe 6. Boy. He turned slowly. His eyes glowed with a dull red light, and his hands were held tight at his chest. He wore no expression, no emotion, but Arden felt the weight of sorrow rolling off him like heat from stone. The boy raised his hand and pointed at Arden, then spoke with a voice too ancient for such a small mouth. "He is awake now." Arden jolted from the dream, chest heaving, sweat clinging to his back like a second skin. He looked around the room. Everything was quiet. But something had changed. The curse was not dead. It had only retreated. And now, something else was coming. By midday, news came from the edge of the southern woods. Crops had turned black overnight. Wells bubbled with thick foam. Children in the nearby village had started talking in their sleep, muttering in a language no one understood. One boy had drawn a shape on the ground over and over again, a twisted knot surrounded by thorns. Arden knew that shape. It was the symbol carved into the base of the warden's throne. And it had returned. Arden stood outside his home, watching the forest. Its edge was darker than before, the shadows longer, the wind colder. And then he heard it cry, faint, from within the trees. Not a voice he recognized, but not a stranger's either. It was a child, calling for help. He stepped forward once, then again. But before he crossed the path, Myra's voice stopped him. Arden! He turned. She stood barefoot on the grass, eyes wide with something he hadn't seen in her since she recovered, fear. Don't go, she whispered. He looked back at the trees, then at her. I think this time I have to. She said nothing, just stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him. She was still warm, still real, and that was enough. He whispered, I'll come back. And he meant it. The forest was different now. It welcomed him. Not kindly, but knowingly, like it remembered him. And it wanted him back. He followed the voice deeper into the trees, past familiar paths now overgrown with thorns. The blue flowers were gone. The stones were cracked. And even the air smelled different, like copper and smoke. Then he heard footsteps. Tiny ones. He spun around. And there he was. The boy from the dream. Bill. Eyes glowing faintly red. He stood just a few paces away. He wasn't crying. He wasn't running. He was just waiting. Arden approached slowly. Who are you? He asked. The boy tilted his head, then whispered, I'm what she left behind. Arden froze. Lena. The boy nodded. She gave everything to save her brother. Everything but one thing. What? The boy looked down at his hands. My name. The trees rustled behind them. The forest shifted. And the wind carried voices Arden couldn't decipher. I wasn't supposed to stay, the boy said. But the warden took my face. Hid me here. Until someone remembered. Arden took a step closer. You're not a curse. I'm not anything, the boy said. Not anymore. Arden reached out a hand. You're not forgotten. The boy looked up. For the first time his eyes shimmered, not with red but with tears. I just wanted her to say my name. Arden nodded, heart pounding. Then say it now. Silence. And then, like a spark igniting dry wood, the forest lit up with wind. Leaves spiraled. Roots glowed. And the boy whispered. Leor. The name echoed. Not in sound, but in meaning. It reached through time, through memory, through pain. And somewhere deep in the soil, the tree that had held Lena's grave cracked and began to bloom. Silver sap turned to gold. Blue flowers returned. And the curse that had clung like smoke to every corner of this forgotten world finally sighed and let go. When Arden returned home, the wind followed him. But it was gentle now. The pendant in his pocket glowed faintly, then faded. Mira stood waiting for him in the doorway. And the sky above them was clear. The sun had set when Arden stood alone at the edge of the forest. His eyes fixed on the place where sky met trees. The stars hadn't yet appeared, and the light that remained was thin and gray. The hush in the air was not just silence. It was the kind that came before something ended or began. The village behind him was at peace. No more whispers in the night. No more dying crops or children crying in their sleep, or animals pacing their fences with wild eyes. The pendant no longer glowed, but it warmed his chest like an ember resting deep inside. He knew now it was not just a charm. It was a memory holder. A bridge between what had been lost and what had been remembered. Yet, there was still one presence he hadn't seen since Lena's name had been spoken. The cat. The black-furred, golden-eyed guardian who had led him through fear and into fire, who had never spoken with a mouth, but with a soul. Arden looked toward the trees and whispered, "Where did you go?" And from the shadows, as if summoned by the weight of memory alone, the cat stepped into the light. Its fur was no longer sleek. Its body was thin, its paws dragging slightly with each step. But its eyes still held the glow of another world. And when Arden knelt beside it, he could feel what no one else could. It was tired, not in body but in essence. "You came back," Arden said softly. The cat blinked, then turned and began to walk. Without hesitation, Arden followed. They traveled deeper than before. Past every place Arden had known. Past the gate. Past the tree where Lena's name was carved. Past the place where shadows had once spoken and the forest had once bled. There was a hill he had never seen before, covered in white stones shaped like stars. The cat walked slowly up it, its steps growing slower with each one. At the very top, beneath a silver-barked tree that shimmered in the moonlight, the cat stopped. There were no flowers here. No thorns. Only wind. The cat turned to face Arden. And this time it spoke aloud. Not in his mind. Not in silence. But with a voice as soft as dust and as deep as time. "You remembered him." Arden's breath caught. "Leor," he whispered. The cat's ears flicked gently, as if hearing that name restored something inside it. "He was never supposed to be forgotten," the cat said. "But the forest took him, wrapped him in roots, hid him behind my eyes." Arden stepped forward. "You were Lena." The cat closed its eyes. "I was what remained of her. The part that couldn't move on." There was no bitterness in the voice. No regret. Just an ache, gentle and honest. "I tried to protect you. All of you. But I was only ever a shadow of her love." "No," Arden said. "You saved me. You saved my mother. Oz. You saved me too," the cat said. It stepped toward the silver tree, then lay beneath it. As it settled, the moonlight thickened around its body, forming a soft glow. "Will I see you again?" Arden asked. The cat looked up at him with the last of its strength. "You'll see me in the wind. In the moment between heartbeats. In the silence before courage." Its eyes began to dim. "But most of all, you'll see me in every choice made for love." Final breath. Final glow. And the cat was gone. No pain. No sound. Only light. The pendant at Arden's chest pulsed once. Then stilled forever. He stayed there until dawn, watching as the first light bathed the stones like warmth over snow. And then he returned. Not just to his home. To the world. Life. Years passed. The forest remained, no longer forbidden but respected. Children dared each other to approach its edge, only to run back giggling. The villagers still spoke of curses, but now in the past tense, as if they'd been conquered long ago. Mira aged with grace. Her health never failed again. And Arden, he grew. Not just in size but in presence. He helped the sick. He taught the young. He walked alone sometimes into the woods, and placed blue flowers at the base of a tree no one else could see. He never told the full story. Some things weren't meant to be explained, only felt. On the 20th spring after the curse lifted, a little girl ran to her mother in the market square. "Ma, I saw a black cat." The woman laughed. "Are you sure, love? There haven't been black cats here in years." The girl nodded. "It had green eyes. And it smiled at me." The mother paused, then looked toward the trees. And for just a moment, she thought she saw a shadow curled beneath a silver tree, surrounded by white stones, its eyes glowing like home. But when she blinked, there was only the wind and the echo of a forgotten name. Dear listeners, Arden's journey is more than just a tale of fantasy or a thrilling adventure deep in a forbidden forest. Beneath the surface of this seemingly impossible story lies a profound and deeply moving lesson. This story teaches us that true love doesn't always come in ways we can easily understand. Sometimes, love takes the shape of sacrifice, silence, and even quiet sadness. Arden stepped into an unknown and dangerous world not for glory, but for one simple reason: to keep a promise and save his mother. That is love in its purest form. Selfless and sincere. We learn that a promise made from the heart is sacred. Even a promise from a child can carry the power to change the fate of someone they love. Promise is not just words, it is strength. It is courage. It is the bridge between fear and hope. This story also reminds us that the past, when left unresolved, can follow us like a shadow, just as Lior lingered between worlds. His presence symbolizes memories and love that were never fully expressed. And when he was finally remembered and named, he found peace. It teaches us that honoring what's been lost is not a weakness. It is a powerful act of healing. We also learn that not everything in life needs to be understood through logic. Some miracles arrive through feelings, through quiet determination, and through the courage to believe in something greater than ourselves. Above all, this story reminds us that love, bravery, and sacrifice, even when done in silence, are never wasted. This story is a work of fiction, written to feel real for the purpose of inspiration, motivation, and life reflection. All characters, events, and places are imaginary and have no connection to real-life individuals. Thank you so much for listening until the end. If this story touched your heart, or reminded you of something meaningful in your own life, please share your thoughts in the comment section. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so we can continue bringing you more heartfelt stories filled with meaning. See you in the next story, dear listeners.